welcome back to our final panel of the day, Apparel Textile Sourcing Virtual Phase 2. I would like to, so the topic today, sustainable products and their certifications. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Gabriella Smith from the UpCycle project, Monica Escobar-Hertzoff from RAP, Tony Sciarrotta from the RLA, and Adrian Rodriguez from GioTex. Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Thank you, Rick. Very good.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Fantastic. So I'd like to remind everybody watching, both on Facebook and here on Zoom, that we have a chat function. If anybody has any questions for the panelists along the way, please post them there and we will address them at the very end of the panel. If there's anything that comes up that has specific to one question along the way, I'll chime in and see if we can get it answered right away. So we have a few topics we'll be covering today. So I guess we'll go ahead and just dive right into it. How this will work is I will read off the question, and this is an open format discussion. Anybody who would like to chime in and add their 2 cents on the topic, please feel free to do so. So here we go. Okay. So the first thing we'd like to discuss is, or first question rather, do we see increased apparel returns with the shift to e-commerce buying? Who wants to take that one?
Do I get to jump in and say, oh my God, yes?
Is that you, Tony?
That's Tony.
All right, Mr. Sciarrotta, let's hear it.
Let's introduce the world to the concept of bracketing. You go online, you go on any website with fashion, with shoes, with any apparel, and you look at things, and what's the problem? What might be a size 8 in one company manufacturer is equal to a size 9 or 10, or is equal to a size 6 or 7. So you order one bigger, one smaller, one that fits just right, like Goldilocks. And what do? You send the other 2 back. And that's called 66% return rate in the apparel industry because of bracketing. And it's happening way too much. Why? Because in e-commerce, what do you do with returns? They are the easiest thing in the world to do. And people buy based on returns policy. They want you to take it back whenever they want it to go back. They want you to pick it up, really, and they want it done for free. So yes, there's a bit of an impact. A growth in e-commerce and the apparel returns space, I would say, and I'll let some of the others chime in on that.
Wow, that's so interesting. So there's 66% return rate, and are those just people who are buying different sizes, or are they just buying and returning because of the policies?
Gabrielle, I would say it's both, and it's not always 66%, but there's common knowledge that it runs in the 30, 40, and 50% range. Not everyone buys multiple sizes, but some do. The other thing that happens, Gabriella, is they buy multiple colors, because there's also a belief by the consumer that I'm looking at a color, it looks like it's mauve, or it looks like it's peach, but when I get it, it doesn't look the same, and I send it back because of that. But to your point, Gabriella, it is the policies that are out there. And this reminds me of, last few decades where the mass superstores, like the Walmarts, the Sears, the Kmarts, and others, they made it so easy. Buy something, and if you don't like it, bring it back. You don't have to try it on in the store. Take it home, try it at home, bring it back. So some of that's just a continuation of that policy. And some of it is because if Amazon does it, you're going to have to do it as an e-tailer. You have to say you can return anything, anytime. And during this pandemic, you can even have a longer window to return it. So combination of policies, bracketing, and it doesn't always look the same on your body as it does on the screen, especially if they're using a model, right? I mean, if that's any fabric, any clothing company that uses a model on their website, a big mistake, because it never looks the same when it comes to your door and you put it on and you look in the mirror and say, oh my God. So there's some of that going on. Yeah, there's some of that.
True. I remember when in my non-sustainable consumer days, I would like to say that Nordstrom's was famous, and we would buy things at Nordstrom because of their return policy.
Yes.
Was that one of the biggest box retailers that I would say in this luxury kind of contemporary space to offer that, because before Nordstrom's, it was you would never get your money back. You would have to get a store credit, and I remember hating that because if it really didn't fit, I didn't want anything else.
There's an urban legend about Nordstrom, and the legend is that Nordstrom would take anything back from anyone, and that some woman shopper brought back a set of tires and made them take back the set of tires. Yes, Jason,
Yep.
that's the urban legend that Nordstrom
they tell
was.
you that in fashion school. Yeah.
See, so it's there, but it's a combination, Gabriella, of sustainability is important to me. Circular economy is important, and I'm proud to say that Nordstrom is still very liberal, still very lenient, but they now created that Nordstrom Rack, right? The channel for those returns to be resold to the marketplace so that it's not wasted. It doesn't go into a landfill. It doesn't go into a scrap pile. And it doesn't even show up on eBay, which is something good for them, that it goes into, and as I understand it, Nordstrom Rack's sales have been very strong even this year. So that's creative marketing and being circular, being sustainable. I'm proud of them for that.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yeah, and definitely, I think when we're talking about sustainability, and more when we are like in our case using recycled material, like is the recycled cotton, the recycled polyester. So we buy textile waste from different mills. So we have a little bit of variation between colors. So that's an issue with a lot of our customers, because we need to explain them when we are working with sustainability and we are working with recycled material, there's some limitation that we have, you know? So we need to first explain them why is this variation, like the limitations that we have, and they can communicate to the customers because they have a lot of returns sometimes because of this, that it's part of the sustainability or part of the upcycle clothing. It's important to understand that everything has limitations. So definitely the colors, when you're talking about recycling, it's an issue all the time. So we need to like tell to our customers to be more tolerant in those cases.
Adrian, that is such a good point. Very important to stress that many customers' returns are based on the product didn't meet their expectations. So you as a retailer and as a manufacturer, you should set the expectations. And the expectations in your case that you just mentioned is don't expect the color to be a perfect match to what's on the screen. Natural variations will happen in natural fabrics. And if you put it out there as a positive, then you set expectations so that when they get the product, the clothing, the shoes, anything, it will surprise them because it'll look great, even if it isn't a perfect match. Because now you said to them, "Hey, it may not be perfect, but that's the natural variation." And
yeah, it is.
You pitch it that way. And again, I happen to know from the personal experience of doing surveys of people who actually took things back. We did this at Phillips. We used the university students, which is a great source of research for any of you looking for research. University students are great. They call up people, they're innocent. They say, "I'm from the University of Nevada. Would you answer a couple of questions about the product you return? And I'll give you a gift card." So when we did that, we heard from 75% of them saying it didn't meet my expectations. And that's all it was about. It's not that something's wrong with the product. In many cases, it doesn't fit, but we'll talk about that a little bit else. We'll talk about that. But good point about the variations, that you just need to tell people there's going to be variations and set their mind at ease. So a very good point, Adrian. Thanks for mentioning that.
Kind of tying off that, so we mentioned that Nordstrom Rack and how they're mitigating returns. Are there any other programs that any of you are aware of? Maybe some that you facilitate yourselves that are aimed at help reducing apparel returns, in addition to what you just mentioned.
I can tell you a little bit from the technology side. And from the technology side, there are programs available for the online retailers. And that program identifies your shopper, someone who's been there before. they've bought things before, and they've returned things before. So you're able to build up a profile of those customers of yours. And you're able to, if you've got the right software, you're able to say, you know what, you bought the shoes in a size 6.5 last time, and you returned it and you needed a size 7. And there's ways to tell people that maybe you want to consider a size 7 for this one rather than the 6.5 you're ordering. That technology is out there now. It's part of the artificial intelligence. And by the way, it will also catch the villains before they, okay, you've sold things to this person, this address, this zip code before, and you've not gotten payment, or you've had trouble delivering, or mistakes happen, questionable mistakes happen. So you also track the villains, and the software helps you do that. But in a positive way, you can put a message on the screen that says, hey, you might want to try this in a different size. And that's not easy to say, but the language is out there. I know it can be said. So that's from a technology side. Other programs, maybe Gabriella can speak to, or Adrian.
So I mean, from e-commerce to help reduce apparel returns, honestly, from the UpCycle project's perspective, we try to shop as little as possible. So the UpCycle project, for those of you who don't know, is a platform that is based on creative circular solutions to build a more resourceful world, right? So everything we do has an impact. And so we really focus on mitigating that impact. So for us, if you're going to buy something online, we really hope that you don't return it, because then that increases your carbon footprint, et cetera. We know it's completely unrealistic to be able to say that in this day and age, but we're trying to have technology help us create avatars of ourselves so we know exactly how and what the clothes is going to fit. So technology is going to be really the biggest push when it comes to not returning items as much. And then if they're going to be thrown away, then having options like Nordstrom Rack is always best.
Yeah, and I've seen some of that technology on a lot of e-commerce websites where they have recommendations of different brands that you've maybe worn in the past. And you can select Nike, you can select, shoe brand, whatever, and they'll spit out kind of based on your dimensions of what you've bought before, similar sizing features, which I've successfully done before. And I probably would have gone with a different item if that technology had not been there. So it's nice to see that that's helping reduce that as well. So returns have always been a thing, but it's interesting to see what's going to happen post-pandemic. So these items that are being returned, are they going to be able to be returned as easily? I know logistics has taken a big hit, and things are being done differently currently, and then especially in the post-pandemic world. Are these items going to be? Are you going to see a hindrance in the ability for these items to be resold in the post-pandemic world? Or do you think that will be a factor?
I'll volunteer that there'll still be easy returns, because that's the quintessence of e-commerce shopping. It's the big billing that says you can buy it, try it, and if it doesn't work, send it back. But what happens after that, that's something I look towards Monica and Gabriella to talk about a little bit, because the concept of upcycling, Gabriella, I don't think most people even have heard the term and know. I just learned about it a couple months ago, and it involves the factories and some of what's going on. But can the stuff be resold afterwards? Of course, in the early days of this year, the pandemic, I can tell you that every major retailer, whether it was Walmart to Best Buy to Kohl's, when something came back, the returns people were afraid to touch it. And if they touched it, they put it into a place where it sat for a couple of days, because nobody knew if the virus would stay on clothing and live for a couple of days. So there was this whole quarantine nightmare going on of what do you do with the stuff? Don't touch it. Let it sit there for a couple of days. And then, the question becomes, well, do you sanitize it? What do you do to make it feel safe? And again, I'll let the other two folks speak to it, but now we know that the virus does not live very long on clothing or anything else. It's a contact, you touch and it's there, but clothing, not so much. But I don't know, Monica and Gabriella, we're starting to see a lot of the secondary market clothing being sold, even Patagonia, North Face, Columbia, they're all starting to do that, right? They're starting to, and the shoe industry, gently used Nikes and things like that. So maybe there's a view of the sales will continue and be relatively easy. I'm not sure.
Gabriela, go ahead.
Monica, go. No, I
Okay. Well, I will say nothing right now is relatively more easy because the pandemic is teaches a lesson to all of us, factories, retailers, consumers, to be more, to take more precautions in everything that we do and how we think. In terms of returns will be more easily resolved. I will think factories will take a look more closely in that regard, because they are doing a big effort to keep the factories running, to keep the factories operating. It's a big effort for everybody to keep the employees safe. The working conditions are even better than before. So for factories to receive, or for brands to receive some returns and to think or consider to easily can be solved, can be another challenge for them. Because as soon as they get the production going and as soon as they deliver the product, they are looking to have the revenue and to have the profit in their way as well. So I don't think it's so easy to do it for them. And as you mentioned, Tony, before, there is so many precautions and so many things in the mind of consumers as well when it comes to consider a product that is already in stock, back in stock again. If I will be a consumer, I will think probably twice in that particular situation, if this apparel, if this shirt was properly sanitized, or who used it before. Particularly women, I'm sure Gabriela will agree with me, we are very, very particular when it comes to fit. Some shirts or some dresses, even when you see the makeup already stick in the product, I probably never will try on in the fitting room because somebody else tried it. So if we are particular in those details, can you imagine, because the pandemic issues we have right now, how can be so flexible to try on and to easily consider buy those items resolved?
Yeah, I mean, it's super sensitive right now. I had a talk with Goodwill, past the quarantine. They've been a very big supporter of the UpCycle project, and we do a lot of work with them. And I asked them, I said, Goodwill South Florida, have you received many donations? And they told me they've received more donations after quarantine than they've ever received in the history of Goodwill South Florida. And they said, look, this is a really big issue for us, not only because our employees, like you said, Tony, are afraid to touch the donations, but we have to have had a huge other warehouse to have those donations sit so that it could go through, I guess, the life cycle of the virus for the amount of time that it does live on clothing. And then for people to, to get over the hump after that, to have the consumers actually go shop again at Goodwill. Right. So the whole supply chain is really, truly being affected by the pandemic. And also there's now another stigma for secondary secondhand clothing, that we were trying to get rid of by trying to make it nice and fashionable and cool, etc. And now it's just kind of like we're back at step one. Not to mention the returns, that's exactly the same kind of dilemma. I'm sure that Target's having it, Walmart, etc. So there's really no easy answer.
Okay. Gabriella, since we've got you on, we can go down the line here, but I want to get an idea. I know UpCycle's been a term for a little while now. I'm curious as if it's been able to take hold in North America or the parts of the world, if it's starting to gain in popularity and how that's going.
I think it's a generational thing. So upcycling is to basically give something of less value more value by recreating it or repurposing it, right? Rather than recycling it, that it just may be a completely different thing of less value or higher value. So when upcycling is concerned, say that you have an old button-down t-shirt like the one that I'm wearing that somebody forgot in the dry cleaners. That's really how we started. So all of these shirts are perfectly in good condition, but they're not valued at all, right? Nobody cares for those shirts. Nobody wants them. So they're worthless, essentially. So if you donate these shirts or you provide these shirts to a creative who could raise the value of that shirt by mixing it with other pieces, perhaps other shirts, and upcycling it into something that has their name and their design stamp and style, that's when you give a lot more value to it. And that's when the younger generations go crazy. Why? Because they have something that's one of a kind that nobody else is going to have. So you're competing with fast fashion. You know, you're just like throwing fast fashion into the garbage, and you're having something that comes from something else, but it now has true style. So in the United States right now, that's one form of upcycling. And we were seeing a lot of college students, high school students really engage with upcycling and taking true to their own style and just being completely fearless when it comes to fashion. Of course, upcycling like that is not as scalable, right? So if you're looking at this, you're like, oh, what a pretty nice project. Super, good luck saving the world. But with companies like GioTex and other companies that are actually upcycling from the raw material into yarn to make your regular t-shirt, that's where I find that the impact truly lies. So yes, do we see a pushback on the customer saying, this white isn't so white? Why is it not cream and less blue, and etc.? So once you explain those limitations, like Adrian was saying, to the consumer is quick to adopt it and allows for the impact to be greater than the actual piece that is being upcycled, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Feeding off that, and Adrian, I'd like to go to you for this. Have you seen an increase in customers looking for the recycled apparel, like Gabriella had just mentioned?
Yeah, for surprising something that pandemic's given us, it's like people have more time to be home in check about everything now. And one of the reasons was this pandemic is it's happening. It's the way how we are consuming and the way how we behaving and stuff like that. Now, so one of the things they were looking, it's about the textile. You know, textile. It's one of the industry that's really polluting the world. So basically, I receive a lot of emails all the time about people just asking me, how can I identify if the clothes that I'm looking for or I'm buying, it's making for a company that have some certifications or what material is on my t-shirt. So because the first thing to start to ask about who make my clothes and what materials I are using for make my clothes, you know, because you know, there's a lot of companies saying that we can recycle any kind of product, you know. So they have you go to the store, just turn out your t-shirts and we make something new with that. Yes, there's a way to recycle in that way, but how we do it from the raw material, like we just recycle cotton. That recycled cotton is coming from the cutting table in the moment to create the t-shirts, you know. So there are people coming to the factory, just bring me just a bag with clothes, thinking that all the clothes can be recycled, and that's not true. So we are in some point teaching companies, teaching the customers about the reality of the recycled product of the sustainable fibers, because the main core of GioTex has been always using sustainable fibers. We're using fibers like hemp, modal, lyocell, using the recycled cotton, that is the process that we are here inside of GioTex, and using recycled polyester, that it's all the plastic bottle that is making the transformation. So definitely there's a bunch of people right now asking about what is the really meaning of the sustainability, what means to wear this kind of clothes. They have a lot of questions because they think when you're talking about recycling that it's using really trash making and something different, but it has a process. Or process is really taking care about the quality about what we're offering, because we won't offer something that it's no wearable for someone. So we have a lot of years doing this since the before of the sustainability was something like a trend, but right now it's a necessity. We always said that sustainability gives to another step right now. It's no longer a trend, it is a necessity because we are consuming an unconscious way. So definitely we need to start to ask about the clothes that we're buying. Do I need it? Or if who made my clothes? What material it's making my clothes? So definitely the pandemic, it's given a positive impact about the awareness about there's a problem in the textile industry.
Kind of spin off of that. So we're talking about recyclables in terms of raw materials, but also recycled apparel, correct, Adrian?
Yes.
Okay, and so that's an interesting point. So with returns, there is a large percentage of people that believe that a lot of returns end up in landfills. Are companies like you, and are you seeing an increase in? Is that true? First of all, and is there an increase in recycled apparel in itself?
Yeah, there's a lot of garments that definitely cannot be recycled for the reason that you have spandex or they have some fibers that definitely are not sustainable, and it's impossible to reuse to create something different. So we are really clear in that, because we have a lot of people or meals asking like, hey, I have a lot of waste. Can you do something like with that? So we check first, like what kind of waste do you have, because not all the waste is recyclable and can go to upcycle, but we do downcycle as well here in GioTex. I have some material that we buy that definitely it's not workable. Maybe because the quality, maybe because it's spandex onyx, or maybe because it's polyester or things that we cannot use. So we prepare that material, we give it a process, and we sell it to another kind of industry that they just like for put it inside of the sofa or inside of the cars, with the to make it in another use for that kind of scrap. So we are working in those two ways, but we're trying always to buy material that we can use to get upcycled. So we can give the process here, open the fibers and reduce those fibers and create t-shirts, fleece, French terry, and all the kind of fabrics that is gonna turn in a beautiful t-shirt that I'm pretty sure that it's a regular t-shirt. People always ask me like, hey, but what it's mean that it's recycled? Someone used it before I use it? No, that's not the meaning of the recycle, Yeah, the meaning of the recycle from the raw material is that we are taking all that waste that nobody's gonna use, and that waste is gonna, it's gonna be in a landfill, it's gonna be in the oceans, it's gonna be somewhere. We're taking that from that space and turning it into something different.
I think it's a good point that you make. It's essentially like recycling in general, like just regular garbage. It's nice to think that you could recycle everything, but there are certain things that are just very difficult to do. So it's the same with apparel when you're recycling fabrics as well. So that's something that is probably overlooked quite a bit. But so I want to switch gears here just a little bit. Want to get over to Monica, I think, for this one, and we can go down the line as well. As a brand, what certifications are most relevant for sustainability from a manufacturing perspective? You got RAP, you got Ecotex, ADRIÁN, all those. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, of course, I can talk to you about RAP. Number one.
I hope you can talk to us about RAP. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, there is so many initiatives that are out there in order to provide a good understanding and a good proof of compliance in terms of working conditions. RAP is one of them that we try to get the factories and brands involved with in a dynamic way. We offer a possibility to train factories as well to be better in their social compliance practices. We teach them how to get prepared for an audit, how to maintain the working conditions over time, not just because they are receiving an audit, not just because they are looking to have a certificate beautiful in the wall. It's not just that. It's because we want the factories to be, as Adriana and Gabriela and Tony, already all of you mentioned sustainability. Sustainability is more companies are looking for be more in business over time, and they are looking to have more efficiency in the procedures. They are looking to have more effective responses in the way that they can show they are not only capable to do some operations, but also they are capable to show that they are treated fairly. The employees get paid according with the law. There is no discrimination, no abuse. So there are many programs out there. Pretty much all of us, we talk about the same. We talk about discrimination, we talk about child labor. We pretty much have the same word out there. The main difference between them is the focus, is the way that we deliver the message. Ecotex is more environmental program as well. RAP includes in the principle 11 the requirements for environmental as well. So, but we are trying to cover more than one topic at the same time. We cover many issues related and that you can find during an auditing process, and in order to ensure there is working conditions in place according with the laws of the land. So we cover topics as related with compensation and benefits, hours of work, forced labor, that is a topic very sensitive right now. So we're trying to be more ambitious in terms of more coverage and the approach that we have with the brands and retailers, but also we try to accommodate our program to facilities because every factory is different. You cannot make any general statement because every factory has their own dynamic. So our program has that advantage to observe not only how employees are treated, but how the system and the management system and the way that the factory has in place policies and procedures works today, works tomorrow, and continue in an improvement dynamic over the time.
Well said. What are the, and I think this can go, Monica, you could probably answer this as well briefly, and then I think, Tony, you could speak to this as well. What are the programs or certifications that we had just talked about that as a brand, that brands should strive for, or as the consumers who are conscious of sustainability that they should look for, that these brands utilize? Yeah, and in terms of their reverse logistics programs.
Yes, well, RAP has a complete set of principles, are 12 in total, that covers all the expectations that brands are looking in order to have production in a facilities. And includes all the, and is aligned with the code of conduct that many brands has. For example, they have codes of conduct, particularly in their own perspective, that talks about pretty much what we said at the same time. We all said about discrimination is not acceptable, forced labor and hours of work, excessive hours of work are something to look at. It's a very delicate topic. So we are talking about the same. Some programs are more focused in some areas, like I mentioned before. Ecotech is more environmental. It doesn't mean we don't cover that particular topic. We cover, but it's more general, our principle number 11 in that regard. Our approach is to give the factories and the brands a tool where they can show the compliance in every single area where they do business, and how they can demonstrate the interest that they have in order to not just be in compliance for the moment of the audit, like I mentioned before, is to show that they really care about the employees, their rights, and they understand how important it is for them not to just to show that during the auditing process is just to, it doesn't matter if you are, regardless of what place you are in the supply chain. You can be a manufacturer, you can be a brand, you can be somebody in logistics. What matters for us is every practice that you do, even if producing or handling any material or sourcing, are focused and based in ensuring working conditions in a legal and humane, in a ethical manner.
And I just posted for everybody, and oh, sorry, one second, Tony, on the chat there, if anybody wants to take a look at RAP's 12 principles, that link will give you a good overview of what those are. So go ahead, Tony, go ahead.
I love RAP. Vitas has been one of our speakers, a keynote speaker for us and on panels. I love the way they've addressed the responsibility side, and labeling is important. And let's talk about it, because the apparel industry, by and large, they're becoming more responsible on the manufacturing side, but ultimately their goal is to sell it to someone and not see it again. Right? I'm sorry to say that. And because RAP hasn't been able to go far enough to say you need to figure out how to take it back. That's not been the business model at all. They give very good margins for clothing so that it can be sold, and anything that comes back can either be resold or thrown away or whatever. And we need to focus the world a little different. And it's not just about sustainability. As Gabriella knows, the terminology is important. We want to stop calling it recycling. Upcycling is just so much better. Millennials love that term. Everyone loves that term. Adrian pointed to it. You don't have people asking for recycled clothes or shoes. But you tell them we have upcycled materials. So branding becomes important. And then the programs and the certifications that are out there today, it is important to know. Let's talk about other industries. For example, remember when you were afraid to buy a used car because it was junk, right? Now you can buy a Lexus certified pre-owned or a Toyota certified pre-owned with 100 check marks on this big long list of all the things that they looked at for you. And now we're going to see it in the clothing industry and other industries, and we'd love it, because when Patagonia takes things back and says, you know, gently pre-used and terms like that, it's wonderful. So it's really important about the terminology. Now, in the apparel industry, I think upcycling becomes an important term, and I'd love to see it become more and more prevalent. And Gabriella is going to help do that, and others. But something to keep in mind is the electronics of the world. Internet of Things even exist in purses, in clothing, in other kinds of apparel, in shoes. This means that your clothing, your apparel, your purses has information about you, right? Imagine the household of the future where your refrigerator is smart enough to send you a message and say you're out of milk because it knows you're in a supermarket, and it sends you this message and it tells you better bring milk home. It's coming, but that means that information is being stored somewhere. It's captured. So God help us that these products, when they come back, somebody better be cleaning all that data off, because it's your life that's out there. And the one standard that's the most important in all of this is something called R2. It's the Sustainable Electronics Recycling Institute. It's a global organization like RAP, and they're the ones that certify that these computers that come back, these shoes with the smart talk in them and the smartwatch, everything that comes back that has data on it, the data is wiped, and it's guaranteed to be wiped. I mean, nowadays, what's that?
What was the name of that?
R2 certification, and the organization is SERI, S-E-R-I. They're like RAP. They're kind of a quasi-government organization based in DC, and they focus on the sustainable electronics recycling of the world, SERI. And again, they make sure that the data on these products that are R2 certified, the factories, they make sure the data is taken out, and then every one of us can feel a lot safer. Unfortunately, the sustainability term has almost been overused, but The circular economy terminology is now coming, and we love that. It really tells people it's not just about recycling, as Adrian pointed out. Recycling, who wants to buy something recycled, but something that came through the circular economy, something that's upcycled. We love it. So there's not a lot of good standards, Jason. You're asking for what other certifications are out there. And what's important is that the consumer doesn't understand about these certifications yet. RAP doesn't mean much to them. R2 doesn't mean much to them. So it's up to us as industry leaders to work with the retailers to start to promote those terms and make sure that the consumer understands. You might buy something at a flea market on the weekend, but if it's not certified, you're risking that what you buy, it could be dangerous to your health in many ways. So we really want to focus on the sustainable becoming circular, on certifications being understood by the consumer. And it's a challenge because there's millions of consumers, and there's not millions of us. There's only 6 of us on the screen today, 5 of us. So we got a long road ahead of us. And Jason, it's important because your organization, this ATS show, meets and shows so many people opportunities to get better and to focus on it. And I appreciate, again, RAP has brought responsibility in. Gabriella and the UpCycle is bringing a focus about what you can do with the stuff. And our association is all the members that do both. They sell and buy stuff, and they also make sure that it's clean and clear and all of those really important things. So thanks for asking. Again, we don't have enough certifications. I'm sorry, there is also ISO. ISO is the International Standards Organization. And I'm sorry, I can't quote the number. There's an ISO number, maybe Gabriella or Monica knows it, about being, what's that?
I feel like there's ISO
19001.
9000, and Monica will tell you all the numbers, I think.
9000, I think is that one.
19011 is based on the steps
Yeah.
that factories needs to understand to go through an auditing process. But the standard that you mentioned is 1901, which is quality management system. Is the structure of how a factory can have policies, procedures in place, organized, and every time there is a new change in those policies and procedures, there is a quality control within the company and the person in charge of that procedure in order to build pretty much a history and have, that the name says, a control of what is new, what doesn't work, what is going to be implemented, and what is coming, what is the next challenges that are coming and are facing in every factory.
And unfortunately, thank you, Monica and Adrian. You all know the ISO numbers. Unfortunately, we don't get rewarded for being good. We really don't, right? As a manufacturer, as a retailer, if you do the right thing, do you get rewarded some way by your customer? Ultimately, sometimes the customer still goes looking for the cheapest price, right? Unfortunately, that's what they do. What we need to train our retailers and our manufacturers is they need to get rewarded somehow for doing the right thing, for taking things back and reselling it, refurbishing it, recycling it. There needs to be some kind of a reward system, because at the end of the day, all of us know there are CFOs who only care about the bottom line, and they don't care how you get there. Sometimes, whether you're completely honorable or sustainable, get to the number. That's the most important. So the focus has to be, can you be circular and get credit for it? And I would again point to the auto industry. You can buy a used Lexus, you can buy a certified pre-owned. They charge more for the certified pre-owned. And Patagonia and North Face and all these other clothing companies, they're learning that instead of that stuff being thrown away or being sold for pennies on a dollar, if they bring it back and steam it, they can sell it for half the retail price. Right. Something like that. So there is a financial incentive out there. We need to encourage companies, and I know Monica and Gabriella, that we're all trying to do that. And Adrian, your company has to look at the financial benefits of being a good citizen, of being circular. And we know that that has to happen, and it is happening. Again, the auto industry model is a good one to follow. Certified pre-owned, you'll get more money for it rather than throwing it away.
Would you
in
all say
fact-
that? Sorry, go ahead, Monica.
No, thank you. So yes, in fact, talking about be rewarded, RAP has a very clear dynamic to reward factories that are in compliance for 3 years in consecutive without having a corrective action plan. So we give a 2-year certificate for factories that during 3 years, they renew on time the certificates, plus they don't have any corrective action plans, any non-conformities, excuse me, during the auditing process, 3 years consecutive. So is the main goal, is where the factories wants to be there in having this platinum certificate. It's called platinum certificate, valid for 2 years. It's more than the price that the factories get, not just because they don't have the pleasure to see the auditor again in 2 years. It's independent of that. It's because they are working so hard for so long, and they are rewarded for 2-year certificate. The process doesn't end there. It's going to be more challenging for the factories to demonstrate what happened in the last 2 years with their best practices and their compliance. So it is a tendency right now in RAP, and more factories are trying to focus and trying to work harder in order to maintain for years and that compliance to gain that platinum certificate. And once they get it, the main focus is to keep it and to have it in a sustainable way, in a way that they can demonstrate in another 2 years they are even better than the last time where they've been auditing.
Yeah.
Well, in our case about certifications, I think we focus a lot on the traceability. You know, something that is important for more from the customers, if not for the brands that we work, is the traceability. To be sure of the product that we are working, of the material that we are using, it's definitely a recycled material. But even this kind of certification works like, if I have my certification, I cannot just give it the certification. Like you can put it on the t-shirt, you have my certification. My suppliers need to be certified, and I need to certify, and who make the t-shirt need to be certified. So everyone needs to be certified to tell you, okay, this product is GRS certified. You know, that's why we work a lot with traceability. Something more important about this, the brands. Like we work with Patagonia. Patagonia is one of our clients. A lot of the things that you see on Patagonia website to make it with our product. So Patagonia, it's a company, it's a brand that it's focused not only on sustainability, if not to keep the sustainability. They come every 3 months to visit us to see how we are doing, how we are improving, how we are making new plans to improve with the people. You're teaching your people. So basically, they are pushing us as well as company. We're going hand to hand to teach, talk, and show people about the sustainability and how can we improve it all the time in the textile industry. So definitely it's a work from who's buying to you and you're selling to work about how to tell the people about the sustainability, and more important, the traceability, that what you're buying, you're assured at least they have global recycle certification in our case, because we are working with recycled material.
Adrian, you know what's interesting about what you just said too is the discussion with those retailers and those brands isn't just about price. It's not fighting for the cheapest price that they can beat you up for. It's focused on, what are you doing right? We like what you're doing. We appreciate what you're doing. We're going to keep buying from you because you're doing all these things. So it really helps to take it away from just a discussion. I mean, you can't, just double your prices, but at least the conversation includes more than a price discussion, or a race to the bottom, as we used to call it in the electronics world. It's less about that, and it's more about, what are you doing for your people? What are you doing for your environment? That's great that those conversations are happening. I think it's exciting, and I'm sure Gabriella and Monica, you're glad to hear that kind of conversation too. It's exciting. It's great.
From a circularity point of view, it's really exciting to see companies like GioTex and other recyclers that start at the yarn level from waste in creating ready-to-wear garments. So we have a program, an UpCycle project, that it's called Loop. So the Loop process is the whole recycling process in general, but we take it from post-consumer waste, whereas GioTex only takes post-industrial waste because of the similarities of the raw material, right? Makes sense for the bottom line.
Yeah.
We as a nonprofit are able to take back all of the cotton polyesters regardless of the source, right? And so we focused on different take back programs and also the end of the loop, which is what GioTex would offer. So sometimes it's really interesting because now we think about things on the waste stream instead of just the final product, right? Because I know what kind of specifications GioTex needs as waste. So I know that some of my waste is not going to be good for them, but it may be good for a different company who makes a different kind of product. So we're really always staying curious on how can we continue to create this circular loop, always with products going back into the marketplace, whether it's upcycled or downcycled. We want it to continue to be functional. And I think that that's where kind of all of our minds are at the moment, if I could, see from the panel. But in the technology kind of space, it's interesting. I read a book called The UpCycle by William McDonough. He's the author of Cradle to Cradle. And he so elegantly put the way that we need to kind of look at the world of product. So we have one sphere that just handles all of the biosphere and another sphere that handles all of their technology products, or technosphere. So everything that we create either goes back into the biosphere, so your compost, all your natural materials, and then you have all of your technology that now we really can't live without, your iPhones, your computers, your cars, your headphones, all of those metal goods and different things that, can't possibly plant and grow a tree. You're responsibly taking them apart and putting them back into the marketplace into a different form. So I think that that's really where the future lies in manufacturing, and then all of the certifications and consumers and all of that will kind of just like build. But I think that's kind of where I want to see the world go.
I think it is heading that way, and especially in the last few years, we're seeing the rise and the increasing popularity of the term sustainability, and it's becoming much more flushed out, and you're starting to see practical application, cost-effective ways to do that, and especially operations like all of you have are certainly helping with that. We're gonna have to wrap this up, but we will move on to Q&A here briefly for all of you. I do have a couple of questions here. This one for you, Monica. How has RAP been able to oversee its clients during 2020 and the pandemic?
Well, RAP is becoming more reliable than ever, and it's becoming more a resource for everybody to be able to continue the certification process, even in the middle of this pandemic era. We are fully aware of the limitations that factory has to receive the audits in a normal conditions, to have the auditors coming into factories and verify what is going on. So since the pandemic, since March, we start to open other possibilities so factories can, once they start to resume operations, they can continue with the certifications process, keeping in mind the limitations of traveling, keeping in mind the regulations of the country. So we include some protocols and we ensure those protocols are in place for factories to be considered auditing. So we start to do a PCAs, post-certification audits. It means we provide possibilities to do an audit via Zoom, via WhatsApp, via electronically, and we provide a checklist beforehand for the factories and for the monitor firms. So they are already prepared with the documentation requires. We are going to, we're supposed to do a tour because it is the normal procedure that we conduct during the auditing process, but the tour in these conditions is not possible. So we emphasize in the documentation review and the procedures policies that the factory can show us. And also we conduct some interviews via online with the factory as well. So in order to be sure the factories are continue having the working conditions in a safely manner. So as long the countries are able to open, auditors are possible to go back on the ground and conduct audits. But when the factories, when the countries, excuse me, are not possible to be open and there is limitations in the country to have in place an audit, the auditor still can do a virtual audit. With less protocols as well, we certify factories since March with this new methodology, and it's working perfect because factories are willing to show that they are still in compliance. They are doing a big effort to keep the operations going, and also they are interested to continue having business in place as long they have the certification valid. So now some countries are opening more and more, so auditors are willing to travel in person and conduct those audits. But RAP is being very flexible in order to give more time to factories to pay for the registration fee that normally long lasts 6 months. They have until the end of the year to make those payments. Also, in terms of those audits as well, the fees are pretty much waived, and some monitor firms are willing to manage those waves because those fees, excuse me, because it's not the same to charge when you are in person doing these audits versus when you have these audits virtually done. So factories are receiving this comprehensive approach from RAP and from monitor firms where they can be able to prepare themselves with time in advance and show still they are in position to continue with the certification process. Of course, any non-compliances that we found during this process is necessary to do a follow-up audit, and it depends if the situation is still the same and the country remains closed. So we program another virtual audit in order to ensure those non-conformities are closed. But usually and normally, and right now, many countries are willing to be open, and auditors are willing to travel more in order to continue their normal auditing practices.
Okay, thank you so much. Looks like we have time for one more question here. What role has transparency played in your business during the pandemic? I think we can go down the line here and everybody can answer that one just very briefly.
Who are you seeing first? Just we're all.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my apologies. Let's go Gabrielle, then Monica, then Adrian, then Tony.
Okay.
All right. So transparency for us plays a huge role, not only in the products that we sell, but also in how we approach our everyday life. So as far as a business, we are 100% transparent in the process of our work. So if we sell a t-shirt, we know exactly where that t-shirt comes from. We know how much they get paid, and we know what materials and the impact of those materials in the environment. And from a personal point of view, we always encourage the people who follow our community, who are part of our community, to ask for transparency from the brands that they buy. Right? So if you see something that you really like, get into the website, look at the about page, figure out who the company is, and see if they're doing more than just selling you a piece of clothing. So that's really what we do.
Monica?
Very good. So Gabriela, we are very aligned with you. That is why we love you so much, work with you. And Tony says, well, I love RAP because transparency is our number one top priority as well, and we promote that within the factories. Even if the factories has problems with the pandemic because they were closed, they were not doing operations during the at the beginning of the pandemic, for example, they are not willing to do a file drill, for example. If you tell me as a factory, I will work with you, I will revise with you which are the regulations and which are the situations and when it's possible to conduct those file drills for keeping in mind those safety conditions for everybody. So transparency is a number one priority for RAP, and we promote that transparency between factories, between brands, between our monitor firms as well, because everything that they say to us is our own image and is our own statement that goes out there to brands and retailers and customers. So transparency defines the way that we work and the way that we wanted everybody to work with. So monitor firms, factories, consumers, more transparent they be, the better, because we are willing to work with them even in the middle of the problems, even in the middle of the challenges. We are willing to consider options in order to continue a process of certification. And one big example is hours of work. Is one of the principles that we promote transparency, even if there is so much overtime, there is so many hours of work that the factory can show us. We have a specific corrective action plan that allows the factory to analyze the root cause of those overtime, to analyze the areas that are facing that challenges and work together with RAP in order to reduce those overtime, in order to have a solution in a period of time that can translate in a certification for the factory. So the better to be transparent for RAP and to us is much better in position we are be to help and to work with together with all the team.
Adrian?
Yeah. Well, basically, transparency is the base of business. When we're
Hang on, Adrian. Sounds like you're breaking out there.
Fibers, definitely.
Okay, I think we can hear you. Yeah, you cut out there for a minute. Yeah, try it. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, transparency is the base of the business. When you work with sustainable products, you need to be transparency. So about where your materials is coming from, what your process it's done. Actually, we have a lot of customers to say, hey, I want to go to see what you're doing. And yeah, sure, we invite them, come here. We don't have no secrets here. They can see where the material is coming, how we're processing the material. They can ask us about everything. We help them to understand the process because we need the transparency to explain better why it's necessary to start thinking in sustainable products when we're buying. So that is our business. Without transparency, we are not different from another company, you know. So basically, we have here the process. If you want to come to visit us and see the process, you are more than welcome. That's not a secret for the world. We are so happy when we listen to more companies are getting sustainable process or they are starting a sustainable project. So for us, it's incredible. But transparency, it's the base, I think, of any business.
Fantastic. All right, Tony.
Well, transparency is not a word that you use a lot with an industry association. We don't buy or sell anything. We offer services and we preach about reverse logistics. We take it as a very serious responsibility because we're the voice of that industry. And with the circular economy growing, we are the crossroads. Anything that's going to upcycle or recycle or repair, resell is going to be through reverse logistics. So our website is rla.org. And it shows everything that the association is about. Our members, our board, our education, our guidelines. So it in a sense, that's transparent, but it's more about we have a responsibility literally to the world just like Monica and Rap and Gabriella with your UpCycle project, these are responsibilities. And so transparency just comes naturally out of that, because if you're going to tell the world about what's the best practice to exercise in reverse logistics, you're going to be transparent along the way. So so it's not the first word we use for us, but as part of our responsibility, we make sure our members know what we're about, what we do, and we appreciate their support. Great.
Okay. On that note, we will close down the panel. But I want to thank every one of you for your contributions here. It's always very exciting and educational to listen to all of you who are so knowledgeable about what's going on in this arena, and and just the dialogue between everybody's been fantastic. So thank you again. I would like to remind everybody watching to visit the show dashboard. I just posted the link to everybody there. It will also be posted on the Facebook Live feed. That is where you can see our country pavilions, our exhibitors, and also there is a matchmaking virtual hangout that we've created. If you scroll once down on the dashboard, you'll see a pulsating green button for the matchmaking hangout. All of you will be in there, as I understand, after this, in case anybody has any questions and would like some more insight in that. We also have our trade show staff in there that will be happy to guide you in with any questions about the show or any sourcing needs that you might have. So that's going to be it for today, everybody. Thank you again. I hope to see you all soon in person, not just on the screen.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to work with all of you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very
for this.
much.
It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you. All right.
Take care, everybody.
What an honor.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.